Think for a moment about how you currently learn new vocabulary. You're reading a book, listening to a podcast, or maybe studying for an exam, and you come across a word you don't recognize. You stop, look it up in a dictionary, write down the definition, maybe turn it into a flashcard, and try your best to memorize it. Then, the very next day, you run into a slightly different version of that exact same word, and you have to go through the entire process all over again, from scratch, as if you'd never seen it before. It starts to feel like you're stuck walking on a vocabulary treadmill, putting in a huge amount of effort, but only moving forward at an incredibly slow pace. You start thinking to yourself, there are over 170,000 words in the English language. At this rate, it's genuinely going to take me a lifetime to sound truly fluent. But here's a linguistic secret that genuinely changes everything once it clicks. You don't actually need to memorize thousands of individual English words, one isolated word at a time. Advanced, highly fluent speakers don't store vocabulary as some chaotic, endless list of unrelated definitions floating around in their heads. Their brains rely on a powerful structural shortcut instead, something we can call word families. Instead of treating each word like a total stranger, unrelated to anything else, they naturally group related words together, almost like branches growing off a single family tree. If you learn just one solid core root word, you can instantly unlock 3, 4, sometimes even 5 related words, simply by changing its outer structural shell. Today, we're going to break down exactly how this root word method actually works. Uncover the predictable prefix and suffix patterns that instantly transform a word's meaning, and walk through a practical exercise designed to genuinely triple your vocabulary speed. Sometimes in a single sitting, let's find the master key hiding inside English vocabulary to really understand how word families work. It helps to think of words almost like living, biological organisms. Every major word family has a core center, something we can call a root word, and that root carries the foundational, underlying meaning shared across the entire family line. Most roots found in modern English actually trace back to ancient Latin or Greek. Once you learn to spot these roots, you gain a genuine kind of linguistic superpower, the ability to guess the meaning of a word you've genuinely never encountered before in your life. Let's walk through a concrete example, using the Latin root struct, which literally means to build or to pile up. Instead of treating the following words as completely separate, unrelated vocabulary items, notice how they all share the exact same underlying structural DNA. Structure, as a noun, refers to a physical building, or the way something is put together. Construct, as a verb, describes the active process of building something up, since the prefix con means together, so it literally means to build together. Destruct, as a verb, describes the active process of tearing something apart, since the prefix d means down or away, so it literally means to unbuild. Instructor, as a noun, describes a person who builds knowledge inside your mind, since the prefix in means into, so it literally means one who builds into you. And productive, as an adjective, describes building or creating a large volume of output. Do you notice the pattern running through all of these? You're not actually memorizing 5 completely separate dictionary definitions here. You're simply watching the underlying concept of building get applied across 5 slightly different contexts and grammatical roles. By shifting your focus away from individual letters and toward these core historical roots instead, your brain naturally shifts from rote, brute force memorization toward genuine logical recognition. You stop studying hard in the exhausting sense, and you start studying smart instead. So once you've identified a core root word, how do you actually branch it outward to genuinely triple your vocabulary on command? This happens through mastering what we can call grammar shifters, more commonly known as prefixes and suffixes. Think of prefixes and suffixes almost like clothing. The root word is the person underneath, and simply changing their outfit completely changes their job and their role within a sentence. Let's start with suffixes, which sit at the end of a word and whose primary job is to shift the grammatical function of the root, without dramatically changing its core underlying meaning. They turn actions into things and turn things into descriptions. Take the verb to noun shifter first, using endings like ton or meant. Take the verb create, add ton, and it instantly becomes the noun creation. Take the verb develop, add meant, and it transforms into the noun development. Next, take the noun to adjective shifter, using endings like full or less. Take the noun care, add full, and you get careful, meaning full of care. Add less instead, and you get careless, meaning without care. And finally, take the adjective to adverb shifter, using the familiar ending ly. Take the descriptive adjective quick, add ly, and it turns into an action modifier quickly. Now let's look at prefixes, which attach to the front of a word instead, and whose job is to change the direction, the polarity, or the underlying logic of the root itself. First, there are negation flippers, endings like un, in, and dis, which instantly reverse a word's meaning. Happy becomes unhappy, believable becomes unbelievable, agree becomes disagree. And second, there are timeline trackers, prefixes like pre and post, which tell you roughly when something happens relative to something else. War becomes post-war, meaning after the war has ended. View becomes preview, meaning to look at something before it officially happens. By combining just one solid root word with a handful of suffixes and prefixes, you can naturally generate an entire cluster of related vocabulary, almost out of thin air. That's genuinely how you break free from that slow, exhausting treadmill and start accelerating your growth in a real, measurable way. To lock this strategy into your daily study habits, you'll want to shift from passive reading to something a bit more active and structural. This is where a visual training routine called the vocabulary matrix comes in. The next time you come across a brand new word, resist the urge to just write it down in a straight, single line. Instead, draw a simple 4-quadrant grid on a piece of paper and label the columns noun, verb, adjective, and adverb. Let's fill one out together right now, using the target word analyze. First, place the seed. Identify what part of speech your new word actually belongs to. Analyze describes an action, so we place it directly into the verb box on our grid. Second, hunt for the rest of the family members. Use your growing knowledge of suffixes to fill in the remaining boxes yourself. And if you genuinely get stuck at any point, look the word up intentionally, on purpose rather than passively. In the noun box, what's the thing version of analyzing? Using our suffix logic, we arrive at analysis, or for a person, analyst. In the adjective box, how would we describe a mind that naturally enjoys analyzing things? Adding a descriptive suffix gets us to analytical. And in the adverb box, how does an analytical person typically go about solving a problem? Adding our familiar ly ending gets us to analytically. Third, apply the turbo boost, and really notice what just happened here. You started this exercise with exactly one single word, analyze. Just a few minutes later, you're walking away from your notebook with 4 distinct, fully functional words, all ready for real-world use: analysis, analyze, analytical, and analytically. When you practice building this matrix format with just 5 new root words a week, you're not simply adding 5 new words to your mental vocabulary bank. You're actually multiplying them roughly by 4, which means you're adding around 20 genuinely high-value vocabulary assets to your active, usable fluency arsenal every single week. Stop treating the English language like some massive, impossible mountain of random, disconnected vocabulary terms that you have to brutally force yourself to memorize, one painful word at a time. English is actually a beautifully modular, logical system, built almost entirely out of recurring family patterns and shapes, once you know how to look for them. By shifting your attention towards historical roots, mastering these grammatical shifters, and consistently filling out matrices like the one we just built, you completely bypass that slow, frustrating learning curve most people get stuck on for years. You give your brain the structural blueprint it actually needs to achieve real vocabulary expansion, with far less struggle than you'd expect. So here's your action step for tonight. Take the common verb depend. Open up a notebook or a blank note on your phone and try building out its full word family matrix on your own. Can you figure out its noun form, its adjective form, its negative prefix form? Test out your own structural logic and start genuinely building your personal vocabulary network, one root word at a time. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.